Hey everyone, today we've got a bit of a grab bag of interesting AI tools and news. Starting with a really interesting 3D model and scene generator that is like a real godsend to anyone that sucks at Blender as much as I do. Plus, real AI hands have finally arrived. I've also got some news that will excite any NPCs that happen to be watching. Shout out once again to Free Guy, and that movie is so charming. Some massive AI news coming out of the gaming industry, plus some really exciting developments from the land of Midjourney. Okay, let's dive in. So kicking off with Fondant, which is a new AI tool that will allow you to create 3D models and then compose them into a 3D scene. As an FYI, I'm gonna call this a waitlist alert. I always get yelled at whenever I show off a tool and then there's a waitlist for it. So just so you know, I actually don't have access to this either. Luckily for us, Martin Nebelong, who I am a big fan of and have featured many times on the channel in the past, does have access and posted up a speed run through Fondant. So I'm just gonna step through Martin's video. It's 25 seconds long, so it goes by very quickly. That said, if you want to see it in its full speedrun glory, it is linked down below. So it appears opening up Fondant will be very familiar to anyone who uses 3D software. You begin, of course, by adding in objects. It does look like you can create objects as well, although we don't see that in this video. I presume that it can import, the standard OBJ and FBX files. So, you could potentially use something like Lumilab's Genie to create your model. Once you bring in your object, you'll have, the standard 3D camera controls, find your angle, hit the render button, and then you'll have a text prompt where Fondant will then render your 3D object in real time. In this case, we have a prompt for an old Viking king with his daughter in a Viking hall. Filmic lighting. There are some controls down here, including these dice, which randomizes your prompt, which leads me to believe that this is utilizing an LCM. Under the settings, apparently we do have some creativity commands or a creativity slider. Running that, and then you can see it's already generated here. I don't know if Martin cut anything. Again, we're watching something that's sped up, but I presume it happens pretty quickly. The renderer is pretty cool, considering that, in the model, we start off with kind of Viking Mount Rushmore, and then run through the renderer, it's turned sort of that rocky texture into like wolf hides, which is pretty much the most metal thing ever. So the original prompt did call out for a Viking daughter, which clearly didn't happen unless she was made of wolf hides. So it is clear here that Martin generated another model. You can see that there is Viking king up here in Viking. So presumably Viking daughter is Viking. He then moves down to generate a skybox and then gives it a prompt, a Viking hall, royal throne room, dark filmic lighting, and then there is a style pull down from there. So it does appear that there's a number of different presets to choose from, everything from advanced with no style, like an anime one, a cartoon one, data mosh. I mean, you can read these. Martin ultimately ends up landing on epic digital painting, and the result works. It might not be the most compelling thing of all time, but obviously there's like a shield on a wall here. There's some textured floors down here. It is definitely a 3D scene, but actually it kind of looks more Roman than Viking to me. But Martin is just experimenting here, so he kind of ends up quickly ditching this idea and moving on. Martin then moves out of the throne room and into sort of more of a ethereal fantasy forest and ditches Viking dad. The one thing that we did not get to see is how the ambient light and directional light actually work. I presume that is within the 3D scene, but obviously probably explains the light coming through the trees here and sort of that background diffuse light there. He lands on this as his final composition, takes that output, brings it over to Magnific, which I did cover in the last video. Yes, I know it's expensive. Don't yell at me, I don't set the prices, which ultimately yields this, which he then took over to Gen 2 to animate. And yeah, pretty cool. So some notes on Fondant that Martin also provided, that the environment maps are generated in the editor as well, but that the environment maps will take a few minutes to generate, whereas 3D generation takes about 20 minutes or so. Martin does call out that the editor options are kind of limited right now. I didn't see anything in there that was reflective of a timeline, so you're not going to be doing necessarily 3D animation here. But Fondant is obviously very new and will probably be adding in features as time goes along. So if you're interested, again, the waitlist is linked down below. Next up, AI hands have finally been fixed. Hands, of course, being a real struggle for AI image generators, and really serves as a telltale sign that an image has been AI generated. Well, we now have a solution: universal relightable hands, or Urhand, which props to whoever came up with that name. I think it was Tomas Simon here. I mean, such a Tomas thing to do. So the model was trained on images of lots of hands, lots of different types of hands doing different types of poses. And as a bit of a secondary breakthrough, the other trick was the fact that all of these hand images were also captured under a number of different lighting conditions as well. But the really cool part is that you can take, say, a cell phone photo of your hand in sort of an obscure position and use that essentially as an image-to-image reference for the model. While I realize that this might not be the most exciting breakthrough in AI imagery, it is nonetheless a very important one. So hats off, or maybe high five, to the Urhand team. Moving on, the Screen Actors Guild have announced an agreement with the AI character voice generator Replica Studios. Replica bills itself as ethical AI voice actors for games, film, and animation. They have a few examples down here. Let's give them a listen. We'll start with Xander.
War is coming. I can sense it. Luckily, I'm dressed for the occasion.
And now I gotta check out Vinny.
So hey, nice place you got here. Looks real professional and kinda slick. Maybe we can make a deal.
It's good to know that AI generic brand John Travolta is getting some work. So the agreement allows for any SAG-AFTRA member to allow Replica Studios to clone their voice for usage in video games and other interactive media projects. Obviously, the voice actor community is less than pleased with this agreement, but it is important to note that this is an opt-in situation and that Replica's agreement ensures that performers will be fairly compensated, their voice data will be protected from unauthorized use, and that a replicated voice can't be used in a project without the performer's informed consent. All of this very much seems like it's pointed directly at the ongoing Nvidia project that they have partnering with Convey for conversational NPCs. Nvidia did showcase their latest iteration of this project, featuring 2 NPC characters having a unique conversation with each other, both fully in character, and then further flexed with their operator asking questions to the NPC via a microphone and, the NPC character responding back as if it were a real person. I still think we're a bit away from seeing this in practical use. The latency is always kind of a weird killer in terms of, interacting with an AI character, considering that the way that this works is that you would say something, the graphics card would then translate it from speech to text. It then has to kick out to a cloud server, turn that text to speech, and then kick it back down to your video card to do audio to lip sync, and then obviously the game engine takes over from there. And that's not to take anything away from this. If anything, this is a technical marvel. It's just that latency does cause a bit of a disconnect when you're having a conversation. Sorry, I buffered there. In pretty massive AI game news, Valve have announced that you can now sell games with AI generated assets on Steam. If you're not a gamer and, therefore not aware, Steam is pretty much the largest game marketplace in the world. So this is pretty big news. Previous to this, Steam had a pretty hardline stance on not allowing any game to have any AI generated assets. Now, under the new policy, you will still have to disclose that you are using AI generated assets, but you can now use any content, art, code, or sound utilizing AI tools. I did find it interesting that the second bullet point brings up live generated AI, any kind of content created with the help of AI tools while the game is running, in addition to the same rules as above, has to have essentially guardrails to make sure that the AI doesn't go, completely crazy. So echoing back to the previous Nvidia AI NPC story, that pretty much does show all of this is definitely coming, and there probably are going to be some pretty heavyweight publishers involved. Rounding out with some really exciting Midjourney news. According to the office hours this week, Consistent Characters, which have been in development for a while, will be releasing this month. Consistent Characters are 100% the most requested feature from Midjourney, so this is really exciting to hear. But in addition to that, it appears that next month we'll be looking at consistent styles as well, and the first forays into Midjourney video, which is super, super exciting. It was also mentioned that Midjourney has been researching into control nets, for scene composition and even drawing inputs. Control nets being something that I took a look at with Scenario a few videos back. And finally, yeah, the Tamagotchi rabbit thing came out, and I was going to do a bit on it, but you know, I don't care. So instead, I'm just going to leave you with an image that Nick St. Pierre at Nick Floats generated. Yes, that is what the future looks like. I thank you for watching. My name is Tim.